And ladies and gentlemen, we've got Eyal today with us. He's hail out of Israel, and he's an exited founder. He's had multiple exits, and now he's a venture capitalist investing in life sciences companies. Eyal, before after my intro, would you like to tell your story to the world and how you got here today?
Thank you, Berg. It's a pleasure being here. So, I was an entrepreneur for a good part of my career during the 90s. Started my first company. Got FDA approval for that, sold it, and then started with my brother four more, from which we sold another three. So, total four out of five. We were lucky. And in April 2001, we started Peregrine, which is Israel's first designated life science fund. We invest globally in life sciences, in biotech, in medical devices, medical technology, and medical software. And we currently invest from our growth fund. There we invest in very late stage opportunities, $10 to $30 million checks. It can be private or public companies. And also from Peregrine Early Stage 5, our fifth fund, which is an early and mid stage fund where we invest from pre seed till around the B round. It includes also technology incubator, which we own a majority of, which is here in the country. And the minority investors are Bristol Myers Squibb, Becton Dickinson, and some world-leading academic and medical centers. So that's who we are.
Absolutely. Before we get into the venture capital and the opportunities in Israel as well as the life sciences space, let's talk a bit about the company. So you mentioned you started several companies with your brother and several of them were acquired. Tell us about those companies and maybe even the size of the acquisitions if you can and how they
Sure.
kind of came about.
Sure. So maybe the most interesting one was the very first. I was still in university. I had business in something else, and I was introduced to those two amazing engineers who came up with this idea for a very small, accurate pump for oil in heavy industry and heavy machinery. Showed it to my father. I'm originally from Switzerland. My father's from the Swiss pharma industry. He said, "Why don't you make a pump out of it?" And we tried to make an insulin pump. We were not accurate enough for an insulin pump, but we were the world's smallest patient-controlled analgesic pump. That's a pump that the patient is wearing. It's mainly for cancer patients. It's for mainly for treatment against pain, and the patient can give itself a bolus. It's pre-programmed, so the patient can't poison himself, but the patient has control of how much drug he can get, again, up to that limit. We got the FDA approval for that in '94. Then we went to take it public, and during the roadshow, we were acquired by Elan Pharmaceuticals for $74 million. So this was really the first, and then Elan, after they acquired us, they started, like so often happens when mainly American companies acquire Israeli tech companies, they turn those startups into R&D centers. So PharmaSys, our company which Elan bought, became Elan Medical Technologies Israel, EMTI, and there we developed everything which was not in the core of their business, which was encapsulations, chemical encapsulations of drugs. We did all the drug deliveries in devices which were around, and not very much changed during those very long years. So it was mainly pumps, small pumps, patches, active patches, including ontophoretic patches, various inhalators, deep lung inhalators, smart pills. We made crazy stuff, and so this is what we did there. And the next company was a company with which was an active patch. We needed a battery with quite high powers. There was no battery available, so we took out a group from the Weizmann Institute. It's one of the world leading universities here next to Rehovot in Israel. And with that technology, which at the beginning we brought it into Elan Pharmaceuticals, we developed these solid state electrolytes, which we used in fuel cells and batteries and electrochemical capacitors later on. It became so much of a business that at some point we spun that one out, and this is how I left the MTI 3 years after the acquisition. And this became ECR, electrochemical research, which later on we sold to Kyocera, and yeah, I could talk on and on about me, but it's much less interesting. Please, I would like to hear from you. And how do you think we could be of help to the audience today?
Well, I've always something I've noticed with a lot of young founders is you start in college, and a lot of the founders I talk to that are my age that are somewhere around college, a lot of them are paying attention to stuff that has a very easier like barrier to entry. The industries where you can just start building like AI, SaaS. But you started in something fascinating. You were like, insulin pumps. Like you wouldn't expect a college student to want to build a company that does that. But those are very important companies. They solve extremely important problems, and even though the barrier to entry might be a little higher and they might be a bit more complicated, they're still very important companies to build. So I want to get your take on. You obviously like met two engineers who were working on this, and you thought, oh, like this has potential. I should go build this, and we can. And you almost IPO'd. You got acquired by another company. That's incredible. If you're looking back and you're young man, 18, 19-year old, 20-year old, you're thinking, you know what, I don't want to build an AI and SaaS like everyone. I don't want to just build online stuff. I want to build real stuff that solve real problems. I want to get into some like the medical industry. How would you still take the same path of like tr- trying to find engineers that are working on something interesting and maybe being their business end, or how would you go about approaching getting into the industry today?
I think it's a big challenge, and I think many things changed during the last 20 something years, but not this really. Where should a good entrepreneur focus his activities, his strength? What's really an idea which is worth putting other ideas aside? Focus on them, work on them for a good few years. Um, it's a big question. As a venture capital, I see many of my colleagues meeting. Again, I'm in the life science space, but it's very similar also in others. Meeting with doctors or engineers that come with a great idea. The doctor says, "Look, I have this idea. I have so and so many patients. If I would have this new device which he puts on the table, I would be able to treat so and so many patients." Engineer goes the same. There's no such thing, and I developed this new technology. But at the end, when it gets after you developed everything, and this is in every space, you spent years and years of work. It's not going to be the users who will actually buy your technology, buy your company, bring you to an exit. The only ones which will buy you, and let's go back to the life science space because there it's easy, but it's in every other space it's the same, are the big strategic players. Are the Medtronicses, are the J&Js, are the Abbott, are the Becton Dickinson, are the Bristol Myers Squibbs. They will write a check and will buy you. Oh, you will go for an IPO. And here it depends on the industry. There are industries in which exits are more versus IPOs. In life sciences, it's more M&A. But at the end, someone needs, if it's the public market or the private market, someone needs to see the value that you brought with your technology and be able to pay for that. And at the end, the buyers who will buy a company are those who know how to bring it to the next level, how to put it into their basket, sell, and make a bigger profit. So they're able to pay you those few $100 million which you think that your company is worth. So it's a huge mistake, which in my space people do, that they think that they listen to doctors and engineers, while the only ones who should tell you if a technology has any merit, any chance to get to an exit one day, the only ones are the potential buyers. Only they should tell you if that's something which is worth investing in. Only from then you should listen really if that's a technology worth investing in. Now the problem is they don't walk around with a wish list. We need technologies in this and this and this and this space, especially if to develop something takes something 3, 5 years or even more. So it's a thinking process which you have to do together with them. You have to meet them on a regular basis. They need to know you. They need to trust you. They need to put you together with the regulatory, with the sales, with the R&D people, and together you dig into the baskets of products, see what could fit there. Every company has different needs. Some companies, they want just to have a broader basket. Some of them want technologies which are newer, which look sexier. Some of them need technologies which there's going to be interesting academic publications around them. And so that's really the work that has to be done. It's business development work to deeply understand what the potential buyer will need in 3 to 5 years. That's something which can take a long time. It can take a year or two, various sessions until this is crystallized. But then you know together what the strategic, what, which technologies this strategic is looking for. Then you can go out and look for companies that do exactly that. It can be an existing company, which is wherever, which is in the Silicon Valley or in Tel Aviv or in Tokyo. But if you don't find a company which already does it, then you have to go look for technology in academia, serial entrepreneurs, other places, and really help creating a company. Now, this is where the really nice multiples come, but this is, of course, much riskier because something which works on a napkin may not work in the lab, or in our case, in animals, and later on, first in men. But this is really what it's about. It's to deeply understand what the strategics will be looking for in a few years. And according to this, you go and invest.
Interesting. So it's kind of like the classic problem of you just start with the end of mind and make sure you know what the customers want and you're building for that. You're reverse engineering instead of finding a solution and trying to find a problem for it. I guess like if you could break down and tell me if I'm right in my assumption, but like if you're an engineer or you're a doctor and you've got this cool idea for this thing that could be valuable, the first step is to go out there and try and see if the big companies, the strategic players, your customers would really want it and would really see value in it. But then also, if you're maybe someone young who's thinking, I want to build a company in this, go find the problems that the big companies face, go do a bunch of research, go talk to a bunch of people. And when you find something that there's a gap for, that there's a need for, go out there and go talk to the academics, go talk to the doctors, go talk to the engineers. Find someone who's got that exact solution, who's not aware that it's in need or it's in that much demand, and broker that kind of relationship. Be the business side. Go to the customers. Say, hey, look, I found this thing and we've got the solution. Would you invest in? So in that way, you could actually get into that and break into the industry, right?
Absolutely, but you can go to you. Then when you find someone who has an idea in that space, you can tell it. It's also okay if you come to him and tell him, "Look, let's together create a company because you're great in developing technology. I know how to turn it into a business." Then now it's not over yet. Then so you started. So now you find your partner. He has good technology. You will put you have the business mind, but now it only started because it takes a few years to develop whatever it is. Now the market changes during this time. It's going to be your role to make sure from quarter to quarter that the strategics one is still interested in what you develop, and two, if there were various, sometimes minor, sometimes bigger changes in where the market is going, that you bring this input in real time to R&D, so that in real time R&D develops towards these changes. So, and then it's only a little tweaking versus if you develop something all the way, the market went that way, and now you have to move it over there. That's a lot of time, money, and work. So that's the second part. So after you found the technology which really fits the need, then during development, you have to make sure that this is still relevant. Okay, it doesn't say that if you started something that after 3, 4, 5 years or whatever it takes, that the market will look still exactly for that. Things always change a little bit, and you have to be with your fingers on the pulse to know where this is going.
In my experience, when a founder goes out to like try and find out a need, they usually have something already in mind. They want a conclusion. so they steer the person in the conversation toward that conclusion so they can validate their own hypothesis or thesis about the world. And
Mhm.
you've built multiple companies that have succeeded, that have generated millions of dollars in revenue, then they've IPO'd or gotten acquired. How do you personally approach those types of conversations so that you're not trying to validate your own conclusion, your own thesis? How do you ask objective questions that actually tell you what you need to know? And also sometimes the customers themselves don't really know what they need. They kind of like, they say something, but it's actually something else. Or there are all these little traps you could fall into during that conversation of being led in the wrong direction. So how do you approach that meeting? And I think that principle, by the way, goes for like from life sciences and medical industry, but to all the way to like software and anything you build, that same process applies. And I've always been fascinated by how to go about it successfully.
Mhm. 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 Okay, so that's something which we try to look back on our work and to see how many mistakes we did. So first of all, I have to tell you that we absolutely did mistakes. We had 62 portfolio companies over the years, and of course we made our fair share of mistakes. I think, but it's okay if we make a mistake as long as the basic idea of taking an investment or taking an idea, taking a company and steering it into the market was done in a way which made sense at the time. Sometimes you look back. For an example, there's now all these. I mean, it's very famous. All those injections that people lose weight with. Okay, they became very popular, very effective.
Ozempic, right?
Yes, and it's a whole family. Ozempic is one of them. There's a whole family of beautiful, of very effective products. They do a beautiful job. But there was a whole area of procedures and implementations and operations, which bariatric procedures they were called, which brought the appetite down. Now we also had investment in that space. Now, but then when Ozempic became so successful, no one really expected it. But then, are you? Do you see it really coming? And when it came, are you stopping in real time, or are you continuing and putting money into companies which now Ozempic killed? But the market still don't know it. I mean, today we all know what Ozempic is about. But a few years ago, when it just started, so it was okay the investments that we did then because we did the right work. Now, but now when Ozempic came, it's such a game changer. Did we really stop on time? Did we really see the impact which it has? And I can give you a lot of examples in various spaces about that. So it's not only having a good investment, it's not only understanding where the market is going, but it's really looking on the market on an ongoing base. Every day something new comes up. You have to look at it. Is this something which now should change your strategy, or are you still sticking to the old story? Hmm. Okay, let's see, and always look on both sides. Don't always go with the original plan. Don't always change it immediately, but really try to really look at it from all angles. Try to have a systematic approach to it if you're a bank or a fund. If you're a single entrepreneur, it's more of a challenge. But also then try to bring different aspects. Take people that you trust, that you trust their way of thinking, and ask them for their opinion, how they see those changes which are about to happen. Should I now take a step back? Because one of the most beautiful things in entrepreneurship, and this we always have to remember. If you look on countries on the world, which there's a lot of entrepreneurship, if you look in the States, if you look in Israel, the two definite leaders, there's so much entrepreneurship. In Europe, there is, but there is a little bit less. Now also in Europe can be divided into a few. But if now you go to the Far East, you go to Japan, there's almost no entrepreneurship at all. Why? Why? Now, of course, Europe can be, and I don't want it now to be too long. It's an interesting discussion for an hour. Can also be divided in various countries. But if you look on United States, Israel from one side, Europe in the middle, and Japan. at the very end, the difference in which there's no entrepreneurship, there's great R&D within the big companies, but no startups. The big difference why entrepreneurship is there, less and less, and so few there, is the acceptance of failure. And this is something which is in the mind not of the only of the entrepreneur, but of on his surrounding, how his girlfriend is looking when now the boyfriend failed, the parents, the village. Is failure something which now means that you made a mistake and shame on you? In Japan, you would have to do harakiri. Or if you were transparent, you had a great idea, you were completely transparent in what you did with the money and you worked hard, but you failed in the Silicon Valley and Tel Aviv, they would look now at this entrepreneur as someone more valuable because the scar that he has on his back now are extremely valuable. That's a great guy. The next time he will not repeat his mistakes again, and then he will succeed. So the how to accept failure is extremely important. Without that, there can't be entrepreneurship. There can't be a startup. Really, a can't.
Speaking
But
of,
that's a very interesting issue to discuss. And this is something which can be taught. It can be taught in schools, universities, but it's not enough that you tell it, that you teach the child to accept failure, which is sometimes very difficult. But you also have to teach his mother that it's okay if your son is failing. Again, he has to be transparent and he has to work hard and everything. But yeah.
speaking of Tel Aviv, so I used to, as I mentioned, I work with an AI startup over there in Tel Aviv, and I was actually supposed to live there for a few months. And you always hear about Israel in like political context, but you never really hear about how great of a startup a country for startups it is. I mean, it's Tel Aviv. I think the founder that I was working with mentioned it's got one of the highest density of unicorns in the world, right after San Francisco. You mentioned out of it's got better and like more startups than and most of Europe combined, including the UK. So it's obviously a place where people should be paying attention if they're in startups. So I want to get your take on this. Do you think if you're a young man today, with the US, it has its own set of challenges. Obviously, a lot of people still say you should go to a place like San Francisco. But if you're maybe thinking, oh, maybe I can have a second home, a second city that I go to, what do you think about Tel Aviv as a place for building startups? And then where do you think that's headed? I know you're a venture capitalist there now. You believe lead like a syndicate or like a group of seed investors over in Israel. So you see a lot of how the access to capital is. You see how easy it is to access that capital, how easy it is to fundraise. If you were comparing it to the US, especially somewhere like San Francisco, I'd love to also get your take on how easy it is to raise money and talk to investors, build these relationships, etc.
Sure. Okay, so first of all, I'll just touch quickly just the size of the enormous size of technology. So, as I told you before, when we spoke before, we actually started this official conversation. So, there are more technology unicorns in Israel than all of Europe plus England combined. There's so much going on. And now again, still there's still a lot of places in which there's beautiful technology, especially if you look on places like England, if you look on Switzerland and Germany and some of the Nordic country, but it's not the same amount. It's and also it's Israel is so small, and 80% of the tech companies are here between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, which is less than 50 miles, and east to west and north to south, Haifa to Rehovot, which is again something similar. So 80% of those technology companies are in a very, very small area. You go down here in Or Yehuda or in Tel Aviv, and you feel the pulse of the startups, of the technologies. It's very much like walking down Fifth Avenue. You feel the power. That's really because here it's so dense. It's so technology is here amazing. Of course, it's not only in numbers of companies, but it's also in the results of the funds who invest here. So we have Israeli funds like us, but again, we invest in Israel, but we invest globally, and we have our good colleagues and competitors, mainly from the States, who also invest in the States, but they also invest here a lot. So it's not a secret. It's not a secret that the amazing technology companies here that do the R&D phase, R&D much faster, much more efficient than in other places, especially if it's different disciplines that have to be put together. People here in Israel know each other, so even if they're from different disciplines, the mentality it's much easier for them to cooperate when it's from different disciplines. Also, that there's long tradition of learning and academic values. So excellent hospitals and academic centers. So all of that together, and Israel being an island and really had to develop everything which it's needed in the first 30, 40 years of its existence. Really all of this together is what they call today startup nations, so that's really that. Now, raising money here now, it's many challenges are similar than to a challenge of challenges of an entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley or in the Boston Strip. There's one thing which makes things here easier than to founders in the States, definitely in Europe. It's that at the end, the Israeli economy is very small. It's not big. I mean, we're not hundreds of millions. So all of Israel is 10 million people, and it's so small, so narrow, so that people really know each other. And at the end, there's no one here really who finishes high school and doesn't know someone who knows someone who knows me, or has knows someone who knows someone who knows another guy, or who knows this guy, who knows this professor. And so, while in the States, for example, it's very important where you learned, which university. If it's a top university, he came out from a top university, so he's a good guy. While here, when we recruit people from someone who knows someone, and he tells, I worked with this guy and he's good. So it makes it much easier. Now, of course, it's still important where he learned and what he studied, but at the end, the personal side is very, very strong. It builds a lot of trust much faster. But after you raise money, you will still have to perform. You still have to do well and be transparent, of course, and very organized, and send your reports on time, like everywhere else. Which also people here are very organized and very very good in doing that. So there are some things which are easier here, but for the other sides, we have our share of difficult times. I mean, there's no other way of saying that. There's this terrible war which we go through now. Just this vicious attack, which was a little bit less than a year ago. More than 1,000 people were killed in a party or in their beds and taken as hostages in their pajamas. Terrible stories which happened during those days, which I don't want to be graphic about them. So, and since then, a terrible war started, which is horrible for everybody here involved in the Middle East, and of course it affects the ability to, for an example, to attract funds. Yeah, it's people wait for things to calm down before they will continue and invest again. From the other side, we will see the big strategic companies, the big companies in the whole world. They don't stop to buy companies, and as more difficult it is during a war to raise money for startups. The amount of exits is enormous. This year was actually a much better year than the two before, in spite there's a war, because a buyer, if he becomes a strategic buyer, he really needs the technology. I mean, of course, it does also affect how the technology is transferred to him, etc. But at the end of the day, those big players, they need new technology, and especially in the life science space, there's no place that they buy technology more. Those big strategic players, they buy more technology in Israel than they buy in the Silicon Valley or they buy in the Boston Strip. And in order to continue and improve medical care, bring the prices of medical care down, and make these technologies more accessible, they have to buy less invasive procedures, less invasive technology, which they mainly buy here. So we covered a lot during those few minutes, but yeah, this
One
is
last question. You
different.
mentioned it's like everyone kind of knows each other, and there's this like mass, like big community feel to a lot of things in Israel and Tel Aviv and whatnot. I want to get your take on if you're let's say a American founder and you decide, you know what, I want to spend a bit of time building in Tel Aviv, and you move there. Do you think that would make it harder to break into the kind of culture because everyone kind of knows each other and is familiar with each other? Do you think people are still receptive to, let's say, a foreigner coming in and trying to, trying to live there and build a community around them? Do you think it's easier? Do you think that makes it harder? Love to get your take on that.
It's something which we see a lot. I mean, and of course, now during a war, people don't just move over to Israel, and this is not the time to do that. But yes, we saw that very often. We saw that entrepreneurs come over here. They come, and at the end, even if you come and you start a company, you don't do it by yourself. You very quickly recruit a partner or two, and then that's it. And then you're already a part of what is going on here. You're part of the ecosystem, and then you would deepen and deepen your connections here. There's also today very often companies don't have everybody has to sit in the same room. You can be an entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley and start an Israeli company, or be an entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley and start together with Israeli partners a company registered wherever you want. So yes, it's not the same like when you go out in Tel Aviv in the evening to a place where there's a lot of tech guys and you mingle. Of course, it's more intensive. It makes things much easier, much more effective. You don't necessarily have to be all the time here. But still, be having a good part of the R&D done here together again with local with the partners that you would choose. Yes, it's a very open, obligation. We work with people from all over the world. In my team, I have people from the States, and people from Japan, we have people in Europe, we have Arabs, we have ultra Orthodox, we have everything. So we have people from China, we have people darker color, we have everything. So yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that's
At the
all.
end, it's an amazing. It's really an amazing industry, and again, now is not the time, but other times will come, and then come again. Come to Tel Aviv. It's just an amazing place. The pulse. You feel it. You go 2 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday. Cafes are full. Young people outside speaking, talking, amazing ideas, and it's not only tech. It's also philosophy, and history, and in art. It's just so much going on.
Incredible. There we go. Well, that's it for the questions I've got. Is there anything else you'd like to add or talk about?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This was extremely, extremely interesting. Good. And I forward if there's going to be any questions which will come up, people will send you. Is this something which happened?
Yeah, of course. People will reach out all the time. They'll sometimes want to speak to the guests. They'll sometimes want intros. You'll get all sorts of things.
Oh, feel free of doing that. I'm absolutely looking for that. Young entrepreneurs from wherever in the world. I mean, that's really what the world needs all over the world to make it really a better place. And gladly help them